Okay, so this is the story of how a 75-year-old alliance, a cornerstone of Western stability, was pushed right to the absolute edge. And all of it was over the massive icy expanse of Greenland. It's a pretty wild chain of events, so let's just dive right in. And right off the bat, you can see the stakes couldn't be higher. I mean, this wasn't some quiet, back-channel diplomatic whisper. This was a public, stark warning from Denmark, a NATO ally, to the United States. When the word war is officially on the table between allies, you know the situation has gone completely off the rails. So what on earth sparked this? Well, at the very heart of it was a threat from the U.S. president to basically annex Greenland. Now, Greenland is an autonomous territory of Denmark, so this wasn't just some casual, off-the-cuff remark. It was taken as a very real threat that sent absolute shockwaves across the globe. And just when you thought things couldn't get more tense, the crisis just exploded. The president took this, well, highly unconventional step of releasing what he said were private messages from European leaders. This move just poured gasoline on an already raging fire. And these leaked messages, they give you this fascinating split screen of the reaction in Europe. On one side, you've got French President Macron, who's just blunt, right? He says, "I do not understand what you're doing on Greenland." Total bewilderment. Then, on the other side, you have NATO's Secretary General trying to be the calm diplomat, saying he's committed to finding a way forward. It's just a perfect snapshot of confusion mixed with frantic attempts at de-escalation, which, of course, brings us to the question that had every analyst scratching their heads. What was the strategy here? I mean, releasing private communications is a huge diplomatic no-no. Was this some kind of power play, an attempt to show that world leaders were still, coming to him? Or was there something else entirely going on? The reactions to this whole thing were, not surprisingly, all over the place. They were deeply divided, which just created even more uncertainty. While you had some people trying to calm things down, others, and this is key, including members of the president's own party, saw a historic disaster unfolding right before their eyes. So, on one hand, you had the president's own leadership, people like House Speaker Mike Johnson really trying to downplay the whole incident. He was speaking to the UK Parliament and he called it just a little rift, basically telling everyone to take a deep breath and calm the hysteria. But a little rift? Not everyone was buying that. Not by a long shot. In that very same interview, it was pointed out that a lot of people were seeing this as the biggest fracture in the transatlantic relationship since the Suez Crisis of 1956. Now, that's not a little rift. That's a comparison to a moment that literally reshaped global power. And this is when you really saw how severe the situation was. The criticism wasn't just coming from the outside anymore. Representative Don Bacon, a retiring Republican, went on the record and said that invading an ally would be an impeachable offense, a high crime and misdemeanor. To hear that coming from inside the president's own party, that was just absolutely stunning. So with this kind of intense backlash from allies and from at home, the question just hangs in the air. Why? What was the possible motivation here? Why pursue a policy that seemed to have zero political upside and, well, a massive diplomatic downside? And the numbers, they tell a really clear story. According to a CNN poll, a staggering 82% of independent voters were against any military action over Greenland. The move wasn't even that popular with the president's own base. It just baffled the public, who were wondering why this was a priority when they were worried about kitchen table issues like gas and groceries. So, analysts started floating several theories to try and make sense of it all. Some pointed to the president's background as a real estate developer, this mindset of wanting to acquire territory. Others suggested it was kind of a mafia-style negotiating tactic, to intimidate allies into giving him a better deal. A third theory, that it was all about showing that world leaders were coming to him, seeking his approval. But a growing feeling, even within his own party, was that this was just a negotiating tactic that had gone way, way too far. Make no mistake, this was not just a war of words. This standoff very quickly started to have real, tangible, and frankly, dangerous consequences for diplomacy, for trade, and for military alliances. Let's take a look at the ripple effect.
And that ripple effect was immediate, and it escalated fast. First, you get this diplomatic freeze-out at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Then come the economic threats. The U.S. started floating the idea of 200% tariffs on French wine and champagne. Of course, Europe prepared to hit back. And then finally, a clear military move. Denmark reinforced its troops in Greenland, sending what they called a strong signal to Washington that they would defend their sovereignty.
So when you step back and look at the whole chaotic mess, what were we actually witnessing? Was this some kind of brilliant 4D chess negotiating strategy designed to extract concessions from allies? Or was it just a reckless gamble that risked completely fracturing a Western alliance that has been the bedrock of global stability for 75 years? Honestly, the answer to that question is still one of the most hotly debated topics in modern diplomacy.